In this video, I break down the one method that I've used to help myself and the hundreds of grappling athletes that I coach get brutally strong for Jiu Jitsu. It's called the max effort method, and this could be a game changer in helping stimulate greater strength gains, improve your overall grappling athleticism, and decrease your risk of injury both in the gym and on the mat. In this video, you will learn what the max effort method is and what it's not. You're also going to learn about the 9 different benefits that the max effort method can provide for grappling athletes. I'm going to show you exactly how you can implement this training method into your own workouts. And I'm going to show you the common mistakes that you should avoid if you want to continue to get stronger and be able to feel and perform your best on the mat. If you don't know who I am, my name is Josh Settlage, and I've spent over a decade training both in the gym and on the mat, studying and learning the best training methods to help grappling athletes feel and perform their best, so ultimately they can lift heavy and roll hard. So what is the max effort method? Before we define what the max effort method is, we have to first look at defining what is strength, since the max effort method directly helps you improve your strength. For the sake of today's conversation, we're going to define strength as your ability to produce force. If you can produce more force than me, then you would be stronger than me. And if you've ever rolled with a grappler who is just so freakishly strong, you know exactly what it's like to be on the receiving end of all of that force, and it absolutely sucks. Strength is massively important for grappling athletes because the stronger you are, the more force that you can put into all of your techniques on the mat. You can put more force into your takedowns, guard passes, sweeps, submissions, back takes, and everything else in between. Now, having more strength or being able to produce more force doesn't necessarily make your technique worse, but it also doesn't necessarily make your technique better. There's a huge misconception that if you get stronger in Jiu Jitsu, it's going to make your technique worse. That just isn't true. One way we can look at it is if you take the world's strongest man. He's the strongest guy on planet Earth, but he's never done Jiu Jitsu before. Doesn't matter how strong he is, his armbar still sucks. And so if you take that same world's strongest man and give him 2 years of training where he's been working and practicing his armbar, just imagine how scary that armbar would be, because he has all that strength, a huge ability to produce force, and now he has the technique to pair it with, and it can be brutally effective. So strength doesn't necessarily make you better at the skill of Jiu Jitsu, but it can enhance whatever level of skill or technique you already have. Remember, no one ever lost a match or lost in Jiu Jitsu or wrestling because they were too strong, and no one ever got injured because they were too strong. When talking about the max effort method, we know that it helps you get stronger or that it helps you improve your ability to produce force. And how does it do that? Well, when we look at the force equation, force equals mass times acceleration. If you increase the mass of the object that's being moved, you're producing more force. So if you have a 100-pound dumbbell and a 200-pound dumbbell, picking up the 200-pound dumbbell, you're going to produce more force than if you picked up the 100-pound dumbbell. If you increase the rate of speed that you pick up that dumbbell or that load, you're also producing more force. So if 2 athletes had a 100-pound dumbbell, one person picks it up really, really slow, and the other athlete picks it up really, really fast, the athlete that picks up the dumbbell faster is producing more force. So force equals mass times acceleration. And the max effort method really focuses on improving your ability to take care of the mass side of that equation. You can almost think of the max effort method as your heaviest strength training or your most mass-focused lifting. What does this look like in the gym? Typically, it looks like working up to a 1 to 5 rep max on some sort of compound lift for the lower body or some sort of compound lift for the upper body. The max effort method can also include doing really heavy reps and sets at above 90% of your max and really focusing on straining against a heavy resistance or a heavy load. Now, let me tell you what the max effort method is not. The max effort method is not hanging your spine out and looking like a dog crapping over a hole just for the sake of hitting a PR. Just because you're straining against a heavy load does not mean you're using the max effort method. We'll get into common mistakes to avoid and certain guidelines to have when doing max effort training, but just because you're maxing out on a certain lift and you have poor form and technique, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're using the max effort method. The max effort method is also not just for powerlifting. Funny enough, the max effort method was originally used for Olympic sports. The strength coaches in the Soviet Union were using the max effort method with their track and field athletes, their wrestlers, their Olympic weightlifters. Once news of the max effort method came to the United States, it got really popular in powerlifting circles thanks to guys like Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell. And since then, it kind of has this weird stereotype where a lot of people hear about the max effort method and just assume that it's only a powerlifting thing. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. If you understand how to use the max effort method correctly, you could really use it for any sport because it's a fantastic way to improve your athleticism, especially for grapplers. And one last misconception about the max effort method, it's not any more dangerous than any other form of strength training. Even though you are going heavy, even though you are straining against a lot of resistance, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's more dangerous than just regular strength training. And so if you follow the guidelines that I'm going to lay out for you later on in this video, it can be a very safe, very effective training method to help you get stronger and improve your grappling athleticism so you can ultimately feel and perform your best on the mat. There are 9 benefits that using the max effort method can provide for grappling athletes. Number 1, the max effort method can help develop your top end strength. Lifting weights above 90% of your max or 90% of your best recruits a ton of large and powerful muscle fibers and motor units. Strength is the foundation for all other athletic qualities. The stronger you are, the greater the potential of all those other athletic qualities have to improve. For example, when you get stronger, you're able to produce more force in all of your power-based movements. And this improving your top end strength also has a ton of value and carryover for the things you do as a grappler. If you're able to increase your top end strength, you're able to use less of your total amount of strength to get the same effect with some of the things you do on the mat. You can be a little bit more efficient in all of your movements. You don't have to use as much strength to sweep somebody. You can save a little bit of energy, which can contribute to improving your overall endurance on the mat. Number 2, the max effort method improves neurological efficiency and motor unit recruitment. There's this thing called the size principle, which basically means that your body will recruit smaller muscle fibers for physical activities or movements that require less effort. So if I'm picking up this stack of paper, I'm not recruiting a ton of large muscle fibers because this hardly weighs anything. It doesn't require that much effort. However, once I move into doing more physically strenuous or physical activities or movements that require a lot more effort, based on the size principle, my body's going to recruit more and more of those larger and more powerful muscle fibers. And the max effort method helps you get really good at being able to recruit a lot of big, powerful muscle fibers very quickly. You can almost think of this as in like Lord of the Rings, how you have orcs and you have Uruk-hai. If Saruman wanted to go mess around in the Shire and start stealing people's potatoes and carrots and stuff like that, that's a very low effort kind of task. So he would probably just send his orcs to do that job. However, if he was going to try to break down Helm's Deep and start taking out King Theoden and the people of Rohan, he's going to send his biggest, most powerful, most dangerous assets in his army, which are going to be the Uruk-hai. So you can almost think of the size principle as kind of scaling up from low effort tasks, low difficulty, just sending the orcs into battle versus as the difficulty increases, as the effort increases, you're going to send and recruit your bigger, stronger guys. The max effort method helps you improve in the overall motor unit recruitment and neurological efficiency. So that means it's going to help you get really good at when you need to bring in those big bad boys into the battle. Your nervous system is going to be on point to be able to recruit those big, powerful muscle fibers. The way this translates to helping improve your performance on the mat is, again, if I'm picking up this stack of paper, I'm not going to be needing to recruit a lot of large, powerful muscle fibers. But if I had a fully locked in choke, I want to be able to recruit as many big and powerful muscle fibers and just really be squeezing on that mug. At the end of the day, the max effort method is great for helping improve your ability to recruit large and powerful muscle fibers. Number 3, the max effort method teaches you how to strain. By lifting maximal loads above 90% of your all-time best, you're straining against a ton of resistance. The strain that you go through by lifting those heavy loads doesn't only have physical benefits like neural adaptations and motor unit recruitment, but it also has some great psychological benefits as well. To be in the heat of the moment and still be able to consciously think while you're pushing and grinding to finish that rep is massively beneficial for building mental toughness and improving your overall physical awareness of your body. You know how in jiu-jitsu, it's important to still be able to think and stay in the fight even when you're completely gassed out and exhausted? It's important to train that ability not just when you're gassed, but also when you're straining against a heavy resistance. Number 4, the max effort method can help you enhance your rate of force development. Rate of force development is a very important athletic quality for any combat sport. And I would go as far to say it's a very important quality for any sport. And rate of force development basically refers to your ability to go from 0 to 100 in producing force incredibly fast. So if you have 2 athletes, one athlete produces force and goes from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds, and his opponent goes from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds, who do you think is going to win that fight or win that exchange? Obviously, the guy that can produce force and go from 0 to 100 a lot faster in 3 seconds. So improving your ability to produce a ton of force very, very quickly has a direct transfer and carryover to helping you be a little bit more explosive, being a little bit faster in all of your scrambles, guard passes, takedowns, and even some of your submission attacks and submission escapes. The max effort method can be a great way for you to improve your overall rate of force development and getting really good at recruiting a lot of those large, powerful muscle fibers and producing tons of force very quickly. Number 5, the max effort method can help increase your overall structural integrity. When using the max effort method, you don't only get stronger muscles, you can also help strengthen your connective tissue like your ligaments and tendons. I mentioned this earlier that getting stronger can help you decrease your overall risk of injury, and that's mainly because you're helping improve your body's ability to absorb force. And so doing these heavy loads, straining under lots of resistance can really help improve your ability to absorb force, help you be more physically resilient, which overall can help decrease your risk of injury both in the gym and on the mat. And remember, no one ever got injured because they were too strong. Number 6, the max effort method can help improve muscular coordination. The max effort method is fantastic for improving both intramuscular coordination and intermuscular coordination. Intramuscular coordination refers to the coordination of the muscle within itself. This is pretty much the muscle's ability to recruit a lot of motor units at once, increase the rate at which those motor units are firing, and help make sure that all of those motor units firing are in sync with each other. When you use the max effort method to improve intramuscular coordination, you're helping improve the individual muscle's ability to contract and produce force. The max effort method also helps improve intermuscular coordination, which basically is improving the ability of all those individual muscles working together. For example, when you're going for a takedown, think of just how many muscles have to work together and fire at different times to make sure that you're able to launch in and connect with someone's legs and successfully finish that takedown. Improving your overall intermuscular coordination is great for increasing your overall movement efficiency through different movement patterns and further helping decrease your risk of injury. Number 7, the max effort method can help increase your bone density. Because you're putting your body under tons of stress when using the max effort method with loads 90% or more, you're able to stimulate a lot of bone growth and increases in bone density. Wolff's Law is an anatomy concept that focuses on the idea that your bones respond to the stress that you place upon it. So when you think about applying stress to your bones, such as lifting heavy weights and using the max effort method, your bones literally remodel themselves to be more robust and dense. This is another huge component for decreasing your risk of injury on the mat because your body is actually making adaptations to get stronger and more resilient to be better prepared for the stressors that you're placing upon it. Number 8, the max effort method can help stimulate myofibular hypertrophy, not sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. The term hypertrophy typically refers to the idea of just increasing muscle size or growing muscle. And when someone is doing hypertrophy training, their main goal is to grow their muscles or to increase in muscle size. However, there are 2 types of hypertrophy: myofibular hypertrophy and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Myofibular hypertrophy is when you increase the size of the contractile proteins within the muscle. This leads to overall greater strength gains because the things that actually help contract the muscle are getting bigger. Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is when you increase the volume of the fluid within the muscle itself. The muscle will grow in size, but that doesn't always mean that the muscle is also making equal gains in strength. One way you can look at this is imagine you're on a Arrakis, you're standing on top of a sand dune, and you look across the horizon and you see a giant Fremen army. And on the other side, you see another Fremen army, but it looks much smaller. You pull out your binoculars, and on the Fremen army that seems much bigger, you just see that it's like, oh, there's 100 guys over there, but they're all standing spread out from each other. So from afar, it looks like a much larger army. But you pan over to the other army on the other sand dune, you look at them and you see those Fremen. It's still 100 Fremen warriors, but they're bigger, they're more jacked, and they're all standing really, really close together. Just because the army on one side looks bigger doesn't mean that it's actually stronger. The other army that looks more condensedly populated, but each individual Fremen warrior is more jacked and just crazy strong, that's going to be the army that's stronger. And so the max effort method, it can definitely help with myofibular hypertrophy, where the contractile proteins within the muscle, those things are getting bigger. Those things are going to help make increases in strength, as opposed to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which focuses more on just increasing the volume of fluid within the cell. There's benefits to that type of training as well, but specifically for grapplers and weight class sports, you want to be able to get as strong as possible without getting so big that you move out of your weight class. So using the max effort method to focus on myofibular hypertrophy can be a great way to go if you want to get crazy, crazy strong, but don't necessarily want to keep packing on mass that's going to move you out of your weight class. Number 9, one of the secret benefits of the max effort method is greater confidence. Let me tell you, there's something so special that happens when you step up to a heavy bar and get ready to smash some heavy weights. When the bar's loaded with 90% or more of your all-time best, it requires a different level of focus and a different level of intensity going into that set. And when you step up to the bar and you get ready to rip that deadlift, or you get ready to just smash that squat or whatever exercise you're doing, you can't be thinking about anything else. You can't be thinking that your car broke down twice in the last month. Can't be thinking about your boss breathing down your neck. Can't be thinking about the dog taking a crap on the floor. Everything, it requires just total focus and being fully present in what you're doing and stepping up to the bar with confidence and getting ready to smash that weight. That confidence not only has a great effect in that training session in the gym, but it also can help improve your confidence going into doing other difficult things on the mat. Now, there's no scientific study that says doing the max effort method will make you a more confident grappler, but in my own experience training and my experience coaching tons of different grappling athletes around the world, when I implement the max effort method and these guys just smash heavy weights week after week after week, I've personally seen that their confidence just goes through the roof. Even if they aren't a world champion, or even if they're just a jiu-jitsu hobbyist, building confidence in the gym, learning how to step up to a heavy barbell, learning how to step up to a heavy deadlift, a heavy squat, whatever exercise they're doing, and getting intensely focused on that lift, I've seen it have so many positive psychological benefits and a lot of other areas of life. That's why I'm so passionate about helping men lift heavy and roll hard. It's not lift light and roll hard. It's not lift moderate weights and roll hard. It's lift heavy and roll hard, and that's the bottom line. Now that we've talked about what the max effort method is, and we've talked about the 9 main benefits that you get from using the max effort method in your workouts, let's go ahead and break down how you can actually implement it into your training. There are a ton of different ways you can implement the max effort method into your training. And with all the different variations that there are with how to use the max effort method, which one works best for you is really going to be dependent on your overall training goals and training experience. For example, if your goal was to focus mainly on improving neurological efficiency and working on your nervous system, that type of max effort workout is going to look very different than if you wanted to focus more on building the general base of strength. Regardless of what an athlete's goals are, these are some of the guidelines I follow to help guide these max effort workouts for a lot of the athletes that I coach. First off, you want to dedicate one max effort method training session to the upper body and one max effort method training session to the lower body. The max effort method can be very taxing, and you don't necessarily want to put both of those in the same training session, because you'll really just burn yourself out doing the lower body first and then won't have energy to really get a good training stimulus when you hit the upper body. and vice versa. So you want to keep those on 2 different training sessions. These upper body max effort sessions and lower body max effort sessions shouldn't happen any more than just once a week. So over the course of a 7-day training week, 1 day is going to be max effort lower, 1 day is going to be max effort upper. And it's really important that you focus on getting proper recovery between those 2 training sessions. So most experts suggest that you separate those 2 max effort workouts by about 72 hours. For myself personally, I've played around with this and was separating max effort workouts by only 48 hours, mainly because it just worked a little bit better with my work schedule, my jiu-jitsu schedule, and all of that. However, I will say I definitely noticed a difference in my ability to recover when I separated the workouts by 72 hours. So if you're new to implementing the max effort method and can separate the upper and lower session by 72 hours, go for it. If not, you may be able to get away with separating those 2 sessions by 48 hours. Anything less than that, or doing the workouts in back-to-back days, it's going to be very, very difficult to recover from. Next, you want to select 1 compound exercise for the upper body and 1 compound exercise for the lower body. Remember, one of the biggest benefits of using the max effort method is intermuscular coordination, or getting all of the different muscles of your body working together to produce a ton of force. Compound exercises like squats, presses, hip hinging movements can all be great main max effort movements that you can do in a given workout. It's important to select exercises that are based around your individual training goals and individual weaknesses, and make sure you rotate those exercises on a regular basis to prevent accommodation. The law of accommodation is essentially the idea that your body adapts to the stress that you put upon it and stops making progress. So if you want to continue to stimulate more progress, you need to rotate the stimulus that you're providing to your body every so often. So if you did a max effort box squat and you did that every single week for 52 weeks in a row, you might see some progress for like the first 3 to 4 weeks, but then probably around like week 6, maybe week 7, your progress is going to stall. You can just keep running your head into a wall and keep doing box squats and not see any progress, or you can just rotate in a new exercise, add a new stimulus to your body, continue to kickstart that progress and that adaptation and keep moving forward. I will say this though, on rotating exercises, less experienced athletes probably need to rotate exercises less frequently. More experienced athletes probably need to rotate in new exercises more frequently. If you're brand new to using the max effort method, I would suggest picking a variation on a compound exercise for the lower body, picking a variation on a compound exercise for the upper body, running with those for about 3 weeks in a row, then rotate in something new. So for example, for the lower body, you could do a box squat, and for the upper body, you could do a floor press. Run those on your max effort workouts for 3 weeks in a row. Then on the 4th week, bring in 2 new exercises. So you just did a box squat for 3 weeks, maybe you do some form of deadlift for 3 weeks. You just did a horizontal press for 3 weeks and the floor press, so maybe you do some form of a vertical press for 3 weeks. When it comes to picking what exercises to do in your max effort workouts, exercise selection should be based on your builders and your testers. Builder exercise is an exercise that helps you have a direct increase in overall strength or in the strength of your tester exercise. Your tester exercises are the exercises that allow you to have the greatest output or the greatest expression of strength or being able to produce force. The easy way to look at this is within the sport of powerlifting. So for powerlifters, their tester lifts are just the same lifts that they use in competition: the barbell squat, the barbell bench press, and the deadlift. Those are their tester lifts. Those are the greatest expression of strength in the context of their training goals, which is to get better at powerlifting. Now, those are their testers. They can't just do their testers every single max effort workout because they're going to run into a lot of burnout, neurological fatigue, and a lot of times overuse injuries. So they need to have those tester lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, but then they also need to have a good list of builder exercises that help them increase in strength to then use in those tester lifts. So if the tester lift is going to be a barbell back squat for a power lifter, a builder lift may be a barbell pause squat. If the tester lift for a power lifter is going to be the competition bench press, a builder lift for a power lifter may be a close grip bench press. A tester lift for a power lifter may be a deadlift. A builder lift for a powerlifter may be a deficit deadlift. So you can kind of see the relationship here. You have tester lifts, which are your greatest expressions of strength or your greatest expressions to produce force. Then you have your builder lifts, which kind of help continue to improve your ability to be strong in those lifts or continue to improve your ability to produce force in those lifts. Where this gets kind of tricky is applying the concept of testers and builder exercises to grappling sports. No one's going to bench press in Jiu Jitsu, so it's not like you have an easily identifiable tester lift for grappling athletes. Over time, as you continue training, you'll end up finding for yourself what exercises have the greatest transfer and carryover to you being stronger on the mat. As an example, I'm going to give some of the tester exercises that I use for myself and for a few of the athletes that I coach. For me, some tester exercises are going to be the Zercher box squat, the floor press, the Z press, and the sumo deadlift. I've seen time and time again for years that if I make improvements in my Zercher box squat, my floor press, my Z press, and my sumo deadlift, I have noticed a significant increase in the strength that I can be applying or the force that I can produce in grappling sports. Now, that doesn't mean that I only do Zercher box squat, floor press, Z press, and sumo deadlift in my workouts. Those are my 4 tester exercises. I have lots of other builder exercises that can help me build strength and then apply that strength in those exercises. So for example, for the Zercher box squat, that might be a tester lift. A builder lift for that exercise for the Zercher box squat may be a Zercher pause squat. For the floor press, that's a tester. A builder might be a close grip floor press. For the sumo deadlift, that's a tester. A builder might be a deficit or a pause sumo deadlift. But again, I can't only do those tester lifts, and I don't have my own athletes only do those tester lifts. If you only stick with the same small number of exercises for your max effort workouts, you're going to run into a lot of neurological fatigue, burnout, and potentially some overuse injuries. Next guideline for max effort workouts is to work up to a 1 to 5 rep max for that day. And this is where I see a ton of grapplers making mistakes when using the max effort method. Once you've selected the exercise, the main movement that you're going to do for that day, you go through a proper full body warm up. Then you start with an empty bar and gradually keep adding weight each set until you hit your 1 to 5 rep max for that day. Usually it takes about 5 to 8 sets to work up to your max. And so, for example, if you're going to work up to like a 405 sumo deadlift, first set would be at an empty barbell. Next set would be at 135. Next set would be 225. So now we're at 3. That's the third set. Fourth set would be 275. Fifth set would be 315. Sixth set would be like 335, 345. Seventh set would be 385. And if you're feeling froggy and you're feeling good, you want to smash your PR and crush 4 plates, then that 8th and final set would be at 405. That's typically how we make the weight jumps. If you're doing a lot less than 5 sets to work up to your max, I'm not going to say it's like crazy dangerous or anything, but you just may not be warmed up enough to fully get the most out of that part of the workout. And if you keep adding more and more sets, you might just lose energy and burn yourself out before you can really hit your max if you're doing 10, 15, 20 sets to work up to your max. It's important to remember that you're working up to a 1 to 5 rep max for that day. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit a PR every single time you go into the gym. It just doesn't work that way. You want to hit something that's at 90% or above of your max for that day. Some exercises you may not have a 1 rep max calculated for that given exercise, or you may be working up to a 5 rep max where you can't really hit over 90% on the bar because doing 5 reps at over 90% is just incredibly difficult. So you really want to think about getting over 90% in overall intensity and effort for that day. Now, you can look at this on a scale of 1 to 10 for rate of perceived exertion. If you're new to using rate of perceived exertion, there is a little bit of a learning curve here, but if you keep using it and you stick with the max effort method over time, you'll learn how to get more and more in tune with your body and what accurate rate of perceived exertion really is. But they usually call that scale of 1 to 10 an RPE scale. And so regardless of what exercise you're doing, regardless of whether you're working up to a 1 to a 5 rep max, you want to stay within that 9 out of 10 RPE scale. So sometimes that means that you wake up, you feel like you just came out of a Dragon Ball Z hyperbolic time chamber and you're ready to smash that mug. You're ready to crush a PR. So sometimes hitting over 90% or working up to something that's 9 out of 10 RPE means you hit a lifetime PR, and that's awesome. Other times, maybe you went to Jiu Jitsu the night before, maybe all your homies at Jiu Jitsu like really put the work on you and just banged you up, and you're under recovered coming into this workout. You are still going to be able to have a great workout, but you may not be as physically prepared as possible to hit a lifetime PR. That's okay. You just want to work up to something heavy, to a 1 to 5 rep max for that day. Again, this is where most grappling athletes make mistakes and really burn themselves out and don't get as much benefit out of using the max effort method because they're constantly trying to chase lifetime PRs. Sometimes the lifetime PRs are there, and that's awesome. However, you just want to make sure you're working up to a max for that day. When working up to a 1 to 5 rep max, it's also important to remember that we're working up to a 1 to 5 technical max. So the way I look at it is you're working up to the heaviest weight you can on a given exercise at about 90% or more, or 9 out of 10 RPE, as long as you're able to still maintain proper form and technique. This means that at any point, if there's technical breakdown in your set, you've hit your max, you're done. Constantly going past the point of technical failure not only ingrains a lot of poor movement patterns, but also increases your overall risk of injury. If you're just starting out, you may feel like once you hit the point of your technical max, you still have a lot left in the tank to give, and that's totally okay. As you get better, as you grow and get stronger and improve in experience, and especially improve in intermuscular coordination, you'll find that you get better and better at being able to maintain proper form and technique as you continue to grind and strain through heavier and heavier loads. When you're deciding whether to work up to a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5 rep max, it's really important to identify the benefits of each rep range. When you're working up to a 1 to 3 rep max, that tends to focus more on the neurological side and engaging so much of the nervous system. If you lean more on the 5 rep max side, you're still engaging a lot of your nervous system, but that tends to be a little bit more in the sweet spot of building general muscular strength, and you also get a little bit of hypertrophy in there as well. You shouldn't only do 1 rep maxes, and you shouldn't only do 5 rep maxes. How many reps you hit for a max in that workout is going to be dependent on your overall training goals. If you're a grappler who just wants to keep getting bigger and stronger, working up to 5 rep maxes is actually a pretty good idea. However, if you're a grappler that, say you're prepping for a jiu-jitsu competition, you want to keep getting stronger, but you really can't afford to move out of your weight class, leaning more towards 1 rep maxes is going to be a better option for you. Last tip on using the max effort method: just take your 5-pound PR and move on to the rest of your workout. When you're using the max effort method, you're going to come across workouts where you hit a lifetime PR, and that's awesome. Just don't get greedy. In my opinion, it's really not a good idea to just keep adding weight to the bar and trying to stack more and more PRs on top of itself to the point where you end up missing a lift. I don't know about you, but if I'm at the casino, I would much rather walk out of there on a win and with some cash in my pocket. And I treat training the same way. If I hit a PR in the gym, I call it there, I take that cash, put it in my pocket, and I move on to the rest of my workout. Now let's go over a sample max effort workout or max effort workout template that I use for myself and a lot of the athletes that I coach. After a full body warm up and some mobility work, we'll move into our main max effort movement for that workout. Let's say we're doing a lower body max effort workout, and the goal of this training session or the goal of this phase in general is to build a foundation of strength. So we're going to pick a big compound lift for the lower body, and let's just say we're doing a Zercher box squat, working up to a 5 rep max. So we'll start with an empty bar, and 5 to 8 working sets. We'll work up to a top set that's a 5 rep max, and say we work up to 225 pounds. That's 90% or above. We got a good training stimulus. It was hard, it was heavy, but we still maintained proper form and technique all the way through. The max effort method is awesome, and it can stimulate a lot of strength gains, but the volume is so low. If we want to get the most amount of progress and the most amount of juice out of our workouts as we possibly can, it's good to add a little bit more on top of that. So what we're going to do next is move into our secondary movement. There are 3 different ways that I like to look at picking secondary movements in a max effort workout. The first one is going to be you can pick a secondary movement that is a variation of the main movement. So if we had Zercher box squats as our main movement, the secondary movement would be a Zercher pause squat. Obviously, we're taking the box away. We're adding a little bit more time under tension because we're pausing at the bottom, but the movement patterns themselves are very, very similar. The second way you can pick a secondary movement is to pick an exercise or a movement pattern that wasn't necessarily addressed in the main movement. So when we look at our max effort main movement of the Zercher box squat, that is a partial range of motion bilateral squat. We can do another movement as the secondary movement that kind of hits on some different areas that weren't addressed in the main movement. So let's say we do a dumbbell walking lunge or a Zercher split squat. We're getting some unilateral movement in there. We're working through a greater range of motion compared to what we did in the main movement. And so that's the second way that I go through selecting secondary exercises. The third way you could pick a secondary movement is to pick an exercise that directly works on a weakness that you saw in the main movement. This is where things get really tricky, and it's really important that you have a good coach's eye to identify, okay, what was the breaking point or what was the weakness that I see in that max effort set? And then I can just plug in an exercise that's going to directly address that. If you're just starting out, I would not suggest this approach in picking secondary exercises. If you're brand new, or maybe you've been using the max effort method for 2 years or less, I would suggest just using the first 2 methods. Just pick a variation of the main movement, or just pick a movement pattern that wasn't directly addressed in the main movement. If you're a little bit more experienced, you can pick secondary exercises that are a little bit more specific to weaknesses that you see in the max effort main movement. So for example, if we have the Zercher box squat and working up to a 5 rep max at 225 pounds, we see that our upper back was rounding over and there's some weakness in the upper back. We can identify that and then plug in a secondary exercise that directly works on that weakness. So our main movement was a Zercher box squat, working up to a 5 rep max. Our secondary movement can be something like a Zercher good morning or an SSB or safety squat bar good morning to really focus on building up that upper back stability along with the posterior chain. Now, I hear you guys already asking through the camera, how many sets and reps do we do for the secondary movement? It really depends on your overall training goals and the focus for that phase of training. But if you're just starting out, a good place to start would be you do your max effort main movement working up to a 1 to 5 rep max. Then on your secondary movement, you do some back down sets of 3 to 6 sets of 3 to 6 reps. These are obviously not going to be, sets that you take to a complete max, but you still want them to be heavy enough to get a good training stimulus while still maintaining proper form and technique. So let's run through the examples again. Our main max effort movement, Zercher box squat, working up to a 5 rep max. Our secondary movement, that's going to be a variation of the same movement pattern, is going to be a Zercher pause squat. So we work up to a 5 rep max on the Zercher box squat. On the pause squat, you're going to do 3 sets of 5 to 6 reps on your secondary movement. Now, the other way we can look at secondary movements is we did a bilateral squat movement on the Zercher box squat. Now we're going to pick something that wasn't addressed in the main movement. So we're going to do dumbbell walking lunges. So you worked up to a 5 rep max on your Zercher box squat. You do 4 sets of 6 reps on each side on dumbbell walking lunges. Lastly, we have the third way we can pick secondary exercises. We have our main movement, the Zercher box squat, working up to a 5 rep max. And then we're going to pick an exercise that's based on some of the weaknesses we saw in the main movement. If the upper back was failing and they were rounding over, we're going to do Zercher good mornings. Say we do 3 sets of 6 reps for that secondary movement in that style of picking a secondary movement. After you complete your secondary movement in this max effort workout, you can just move into your accessory work. Your accessory work uses the repetition effort method, which I have videos on my channel talking about that. There's some older videos, but I probably should just make some updated and some newer ones. But really, for the sake of this video, what's important to remember is that you just want to pick 2 to 4 isolation or single joint exercises that just kind of build up the muscles that were used in the main movement and the secondary movement. So if we were doing a max effort lower body workout, we'd want to pick, say, 4 exercises. We'd want to do something for the hamstrings, like banded leg curls. We'd want to do something for the trunk, like dumbbell side bends. We'd want to do something for the lower back, like reverse hypers. And we'd want to do something for the hips and the adductors, like the Copenhagen plank. Those could be 4 great lower body accessory exercises that you mix into the end of your workout. Sets and reps go all over the place depending on what your training goals are, and I won't talk about sets and reps for accessory exercises right now. I'm going to save that for the repetition effort video, which you'll just have to stay tuned and subscribe to see when that video drops. We've talked about what the max effort method is. We've talked about the 9 benefits you get from using the max effort method. We talked about guidelines you can follow. And when using the max effort method, we gave you a sample max effort workout that you could plug into your training. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. But before you go off and start slanging heavy weights, it's important that you know about the common mistakes that most grappling athletes make when using the max effort method. If you want to get the most out of this style of training, you want to get brutally strong, you want to decrease the risk of injury. If you freaking love lifting heavy and rolling hard, this is going to be the most important part of the video right here. You don't want to make these mistakes. Mistake number 1 when using the max effort method, going past the point of technical failure. Remember, the goal is to work up to a 1 to 5 technical max for that day. You don't get much benefit going past the point of technical failure when using the max effort method. All you're doing is ingraining poor movement patterns and significantly increasing your risk of injury. Mistake number 2 when using the max effort method, not selecting the right exercises. This happens more with people who have been using the max effort method for a little bit longer period of time. So like they've been using it for about 6 months to a year, and then they just start going way out there with picking way too weird exercises for the max effort method. What started as just doing a box squat for a 3-rep max then turns into doing a single leg Bosu ball pistol squat with a kettlebell over their head. Like it gets way out of hand. When you're picking exercises for the max effort method, don't pick exercises that are overly complicated just for the sake of being overly complicated. And don't pick exercises that are unstable just for the sake of being unstable. The more stability you take away from a max effort exercise, the less force you're able to produce. So think about it this way. If you were to push the heaviest sled possible, you would want to be really, really stable. You'd probably want to wear cleats or shoes that can really grip the floor and make your feet stable so you can start driving and pushing that sled. If you tried to push that same sled with all that weight on an ice skating rink, you're not going to be able to produce that much force and you're not going to be able to go anywhere. So just because the exercise is quote unquote harder because it's more unstable doesn't mean that it's actually giving you the benefit of helping you be able to produce more force and improving your top end strength. Mistake number 3 that I see people make with the max effort method is not auto-regulating your training. If you love to lift heavy and roll hard, you need to get familiar with the idea of auto-regulation. Auto-regulation is the idea that you can change the training intensity or volume of a given workout based on how recovered or prepared you are on that day. So for example, say you step out of your Dragon Ball Z hyperbolic time chamber and you're feeling awesome. You're ready to freaking crush that workout. You can just roll right into that workout, smash some PRs, move on to the rest of your exercises, have a great workout, and go home. But let's say there's a training day where the night before you did a really, really hard Jiu Jitsu session. You went home, you didn't really eat as much as you should have, and then you also stayed up really late watching Dune and Dune Part 2. Not that I've ever done that, but let's just say hypothetically someone did that and you didn't get much sleep. You roll up to the gym the next day, you're not physically prepared to hit a lifetime PR on a given exercise. If that's the case, you may need to auto-regulate your training and bring down the intensity or bring down the training volume to be a little bit more appropriately aligned with how physically prepared you are for that day. There is a caveat to this because when you're first starting out learning about auto-regulation and trying to get a good feel for how much your body can handle, how much you need to push it, how much you need to dial things back, you're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. In a future video, I'll do a big video on auto-regulation and how to know whether you're doing too much or whether you're doing too little. But just know that it's going to take some time to get really familiar with the idea of auto-regulation and be in tune with your body enough to know, okay, this is when I need to push it, this is when I need to dial things back. Mistake number 4 that I see grappling athletes make when using the max effort method, constantly missing lifts in the gym. Even though you're working up to a 1 to 5 rep max in each max effort workout, that doesn't mean that you need to constantly go all the way to the point where you miss lifts in every single workout. My personal opinion on this is that athletes should hardly ever miss lifts in the gym. Focus on successfully hitting the heaviest load or the heaviest weight you can in that workout, and then moving on to the rest of the exercises. I see this problem a lot more with less experienced athletes, mainly because they haven't had enough experience to accurately gauge how much they have left in the tank on a given max effort exercise. Mistake number 5 that I see grappling athletes make with the max effort method: training hard but not recovering harder. Remember, it's not about what you do in the gym or on the mat that leads to progress. It's about what you do and can recover from. And if you're not seeing progress with your max effort workouts, it's likely due to the fact that you're either not dialing in your nutrition and providing your body with the right nutrients for recovery, and or you're not getting in enough sleep to help your body rebuild and recover from the training that you're doing in the gym and on the mat. The 3 things that you can do to recover harder from all of your hard training is to get plenty of sleep, dial in your nutrition, and properly structure your training week to allow for enough recovery between all of those high intensity training sessions. Thank you so much for tuning in to learn more about how to use the max effort method to build. If you like this video and want to get more content like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Lift heavy, roll hard, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.